Most of us treat the opening chapter of the New Testament like the end credits of a movie. We see that long, dense list of names, and we just fast forward to get to the real action. But to a Jewish audience, a genealogy was an airtight legal document, objective proof of a king's status. These trees were constructed with rigid precision, exclusively male, projecting an unbroken line of patriarchs, a spiritual dream team of absolute purity. The rules were struck for a reason. If you tampered with this specific format, or admitted a flaw in the bloodline, you risked invalidating the Messiah's entire legal claim to the throne. Yet, right in the middle of building this flawless legal case, the author of Matthew does something completely unexpected. He deliberately breaks his own rigid format. He inserts the names of 5 women: Tamar, Rahab, Ruth, Bathsheba, and Mary. These individuals existed on the margins of society, outsiders in stories most would keep buried. Why would Matthew risk a foundational legal defense of the promised king by anchoring it to such a deeply unqualified, messy lineage? To understand the pattern, we have to look closely at the first 2 historical anomalies in the list: Tamar and Rahab. Tamar suffered profound betrayal. She was completely discarded and forgotten by the very royal patriarchs who were legally obligated to protect her. Rahab was a Canaanite. She lived in enemy territory and worked in a profession that made her an absolute religious and social pariah. By all conventional logic, they belonged nowhere near a sacred text, yet they are placed at the very foundation of the Messiah's family tree. Right from page 1, the text establishes a clear rule: a traumatic past and 0 social status do not disqualify a person from participating in God's story. Moving down the timeline, we hit the next pair of disruptive names: Ruth and Bathsheba. Ruth was a Moabitess. She was an ethnic outsider from a group that historically stood as sworn enemies to Israel. Her inclusion proves that God's grace deliberately crosses enemy lines. This was always a global mission, long before anyone had heard of a Great Commission. And then there is Bathsheba. Matthew is brutally honest here, specifically calling her the wife of Uriah. He refuses to sugarcoat the king's darkest scandal or the profound trauma inflicted by the royal palace. The genealogy intentionally records the nation's worst moral failures. It acknowledges the broken chapters, proving that God steps directly into human devastation to reclaim and restore what was lost. That brings us to the final and most critical anomaly in this legal document: Mary. She had 0 societal qualifications. She was a young, completely obscure peasant living in an insignificant working-class town. Her life demonstrates a theological concept called the arc of revelation, a pattern where human logic is entirely inverted. Instead of assembling the powerful and the pious, God consistently seeks out the unloved, the unqualified, and the invisible, placing them at the absolute center of redemption. Mary proves that the religious elite's strict, exclusive definition of holiness was completely backwards. So why does a 2,000-year-old legal argument matter to you on a Tuesday afternoon? Because it proves God is not looking for a polished roster of people who have perfectly cleaned up their lives. He intentionally takes the raw materials of human heartbreak, rivalry, and messiness, and weaves them together to build a unified narrative of grace. If God required the ultimate outcasts to build the family tree of the king, then your feeling of being entirely unqualified might be the exact requirement for your invitation.